This story is based on the case of Jennifer Pan. You want to hear something psychologically disturbing? This story starts with somebody who's pretending to be successful, which honestly doesn't sound that unusual at first because people lie about things all the time. Grades, jobs, relationships, money, status. But apparently this lie kept growing and growing until eventually an entire fake reality had been built around it. And I think that's what makes this story so unsettling. It's not just the crime itself, it's the amount of emotional pressure, the fear, the deception that all apparently existed long before it happened. So, this case revolves around a woman named Jennifer Pan. And from the outside, her life looked extremely accomplished. Good student, responsible daughter, structured household, the kind of life that probably looked very successful to other people. But apparently, underneath all of it, things were much more unstable than they seemed. According to investigators, Jennifer had secretly been lying to her parents about huge parts of her life for years: college, grades, her daily routine, even whether she was actually attending school at all. And somehow, instead of the lies collapsing in on her, they apparently just became more elaborate over time. That part really stuck with me because once somebody starts emotionally attaching their worth to being perceived a certain way, the truth itself can start feeling dangerous, especially if they believe disappointing people would emotionally destroy the life they've built around them. And apparently, Jennifer became trapped inside of this growing performance she no longer knew how to escape from, which honestly sounds so mentally exhausting. Imagine waking up every day and having to maintain an entire version of yourself that isn't even real anymore. According to the reports, Jennifer's parents were extremely strict and placed enormous emphasis on achievement and discipline. And while reading about this case, I kept thinking about how psychologically complicated pressure can become when somebody starts believing the love they receive, the approval, or the safety they need are tied directly to this performance. Because eventually, failure stops feeling uncomfortable and starts feeling catastrophic, like the collapse of your identity itself. As the lies continued building, apparently Jennifer became increasingly desperate to maintain the version of reality she had created. That's what makes this story feel eerie to me, because at some point, it seems like the fake life became emotionally easier to manage than the truth. And once somebody becomes emotionally trapped inside deception long enough, their decisions can start becoming very distorted. Not because they necessarily lose touch with reality completely, but because they become terrified of what happens if reality finally catches up to them. The deeper I got into this case, the more unsettling the emotional atmosphere started feeling, because from the outside, this wasn't chaos. It looked normal. Quiet house, structured family, ordinary routines, which honestly makes stories like this so much scarier to me, because the idea that somebody can be psychologically unraveling internally, while from the outside everything completely looks functional. Well, in 2010, Jennifer Pan called 911 claiming intruders had entered her family home. During the attack, her mother was killed and her father was seriously injured. But as investigators started examining the case, Parts of Jennifer's story reportedly stopped making sense. Eventually, authorities concluded the attack had actually been orchestrated from inside the family itself. I think the reason this story stayed on my mind is because it doesn't feel driven by one single emotion. It's not just greed, it's not just anger or just hatred. It feels more like years of pressure, fear, performance, deception, and emotional paralysis collapsing inward all at once, which is psychologically much harder to untangle. There's something deeply unsettling about the idea that a person can become so emotionally trapped inside of this fake identity that telling the truth starts feeling more terrifying than destroying everything around them to protect the lie. Especially when the deception has been going on for years, but eventually the fake version of life can start feeling emotionally safer than reality itself. That's what's so dark. Not just the crime, the slow psychological suffocation underneath it. Honestly, I think stories like this force people to confront something uncomfortable about human behavior. How much of our identity is actually built around being honest about who we are? And how much of it is built around protecting the version of ourselves we think other people want to see? Because once somebody becomes emotionally dependent on maintaining an illusion, the fear of losing it can apparently become dangerous. And I'm curious what you think about this. Do you think pressure and expectations externally can genuinely push people into psychologically dangerous behavior over time?